Hey friends, as this episode comes out, I'll be celebrating my birthday. And in light of this, I think less podcasting production this month would be a kind gesture for myself. But at the same time, I do want to keep this show rolling consistently. So I thought I'd share with you another podcast called Yoga Changed. And I actually got to be on their show. I had the opportunity to have them interview me. And in this episode, I share all about how yoga changed my life. And I do realize I don't share that side of me very much on Yoga and podcast. And so I want you to know my story about all about how yoga changed my life, my 18-year career teaching mind-body disciplines. I share a lot about what it is like going through burnout. And I also talk about the pandemic and what it was like for me and how I had to shift my mindset and find abundance and gratitude in the small things. I also speak about how much I didn't appreciate yoga in the beginning and how I was so skeptical of it. Please go and follow Yoga Changed podcast. Adrian and Mia, the host of the show, have a really good thing going. And if you like yoga and podcast, I know you're going to love them as well. Enjoy this episode, y'all.
Next month,
and they're all going to
graduates.
Give our
Graduates
GoFundMe
trainees.
for one of our
Graduates.
trainees.
Graduates. Thank you. I was like, there's a word. I'm just not finding it.
Hey yogis, Mia and Adrian here. We have a super amazing interview for you today. We traveled up to Austin, Texas, went to this Austin Central Library and met up with Ashley Weber, host of the Yoga and podcast, as well as just a super funny human being. We were cracking up in this little dark library room, and the other people in the library probably wondering what the hell is going on behind that glass door. But so I'm super excited for you to listen to it. Let's dive right in.
This is Adrian.
And Mia.
Welcome to How Yoga Changed My Life podcast. Today we are up in Austin. We did a little relocation of the podcast to the Austin Central Library, which actually is a beautiful space. And we are here with the lovely Ashley Weber. How are you, Ashley?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. So Ashley reached out to us, and she has her own podcast called Yoga and ... And I'm so excited that we get to talk to her today and hear her yoga origin story. So Mia, you want to take it off?
Sure. Great. I think Adrian teed us up perfectly. Tell us, let's actually start with you. Tell us about yourself, Ashley.
Oh. Well, I'm a 37-year-old cat mama who loves to teach yoga, Pilates, and meditation. I've done that my whole adult career. I feel like I was meant to be a teacher. I'm a seeker. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience.
There you go. I love it. I love it. That's perfect.
So obviously we know a teensy bit, your whole adult career, yoga, meditation, Pilates, but what's your origin story for yoga? How'd you get into it? How'd you find it?
Well, I was always a Pilates instructor before anything else. I got certified when I was 20, and my acupuncturist actually told me, hey, you need to go to yoga, that your nervous system sucks, basically. But I'm like, I do Pilates. I don't see what the big deal is. And to be frank, there was a lot of resistance getting into yoga because my younger self was definitely more like a know-it-all, like I know everything. And so to be vulnerable in that way, like it's mind, body, it's same but different. You know, in yoga, you're holding postures, you're standing. Pilates, you're not doing that, right? So my first yoga class, I was like a baby giraffe being born. Like it was so awkward.
I know that feeling.
And it was, you know, my ego suffered, in my early 20s. So I was like, I'm not going back. But clearly it got me, so.
So before you said you got your Pilates certification when you were 20 years old. So what's like previously, like what was your first experience with fitness or with Pilates or with yoga? Like the first time you had a yoga class or experienced a yoga pose?
Ooh, well, I'll mention kind of the motive for wanting to even start in mind-body practices, and then I'll mention specifically my first yoga class.
Okay.
So when I was really young, I was a teenager. My mom took me to like a Pilates class, like a mat class. I lived in the country. I lived in Lampasas, Texas, and there was like a Central Texas College. There was a college next to it that had adult vocational classes, and we would roll around the floor, do a bunch of Pilates mat work. That reminded me of ballet. I love ballet. I was not a fitness kid. I was that kid who was in soccer afraid of the ball. Like I was never competitive. So I never had a relationship with movement at that point, but that Pilates class really something clicked, right? And so then I moved to Austin from the country to get certified, and then I kept noticing, Pilates is great, but like there's a lot of stretches that my clients need that I don't know, and specifically mat stretches. So that piqued my interest in wanting to learn about yoga, and then my acupuncturist encouraging me. I was like, there's a reason why like so many people resonate with yoga. I want to figure out what that is. So my first yoga class, like I mentioned, it was really awkward. Like I just didn't know what the hell I was doing, and
Were you in high school when that happened, or were you older?
I was older. I was already quote unquote an adult.
Right,
I was
right.
like 25. What I couldn't even tie my shoes at 25. You know what I mean? But yeah. So here's what I didn't like about my first yoga class.
Oh, I
is
love this. Tell me more.
Well, I'm a skeptic. I was a non-believer. Like spiritual. I was like not spiritual when I was that age. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, they're alming, but no one's telling me why they're alming. They're just expecting me to like mindlessly obey. And so I would never when I would go to. So I went to like a handful of classes. I wouldn't I would judge the hell out of why they're not telling me like why we're alming, But there was something about yoga that I knew people loved it. There was something there, and I was just so curious. I wanted to find out, like, what is the big deal about yoga? Mm-hmm. Because my Pilates clients also would go to yoga, and so I knew people loved it. I didn't know why, and so I'm like such a little scientist in some ways. Like I have to excavate and figure it out, and I figured it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And when did you figure it out? What was that switch for you?
Ooh, no one's ever asked me that. Okay. Oh, well, there's been a lot of layers. For me, this is a little bit dark, but
It's okay. We love dark.
I'm an introvert through and through. I'm a Virgo. There's like the hermit card associated with that sign. I can be a bit of a hermit. And honestly, when I'd go to yoga classes, we would check in and they would ask me how I was doing. They'd ask me how I'm feeling. And when you're, a single girl alone, sometimes you go days without anyone asking you specifically that. Yeah. And so it was a sense of care. It was a sense of community. It was a sense of someone holding space for you. I went around holding space for everyone all day in my profession in Pilates. So having someone hold space for me just was so healing and important. So that was like stage one. And then stage two, I took a mentorship program, and everyone in that program was an empath. I had no idea I was one at that time, and I found out. And I didn't know that I was an emotional sponge. And when I get done with work, I would just like be basically dead on the couch, unable to do anything. I just thought that's what everyone did after work.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how unhealthy it was. So, yoga has always been this pathway for me. I think for a lot of people, perhaps it's a pathway of self-knowing, self-discovering. And that has been my pathway. And it's been really accessible to me. I live in the Austin area. The yoga community is alive and well here.
Very wide.
It's not hard to find a class.
Yeah.
So, it's really been a social thing for me, too.
Oh, for sure. Well, you said it best. You said community and a sense of care, And Mia and I can totally relate to the feeling of like being just drained after a class, because I think that people that are drawn to yoga teaching are empathetic people, right? We're compassionate people, and we have that ability to sense the actual scientific, energetic body that has been proven to be around our bodies, right? We can sense that. And I think it's just something that we're drawn to. But you're right, we have to take care of our own health and wellness to be able to be there for other people.
Yeah, and I'm so glad y'all can relate to that, because I thought I was such a weirdo. I thought I was the only one who had that problem. And then, you know, as I get to know more people within this yoga community, you know, it's so validating to know, like, oh, you're a little bit sensitive? I'm a little bit sensitive. I was told my whole upbringing being sensitive was a bad thing.
Oh, yes.
Now it's my superpower. So it's just been so healing to be around like-minded people in that way.
And out of curiosity, did you ever, or, you know, are you in the process of figuring out, right? Or a balance? Like, have you ever figured out how to not be drained at the end of the day, like that sponge that needs a wringing out on the couch? What has that looked like for you?
Oh, my journey with that has been, you know, there's been therapy, there's been a lot of self-exploration, a lot of self-help books. But the big thing is, so I know this about myself. I receive value from being the space holder, the people pleaser,
The helper.
the helper. I receive so much value from that. Or that was how I earned my value in my family dynamic, you know, my upbringing. And so what I've had to, you know, and I'm human, I'm going to be working on this my whole life. I don't have it nailed yet, but I'm more and more okay with saying no to people, with being, you know, not everyone's yes girl. You know, I'm more and more okay with that as I get older. And you know, the wisdom of saying no, you're creating space for something better to come, but you have to keep the faith that it will, right? And so I say no all the time to things, because it's about discernment, you know? So that discernment is what, and I mean, honestly, being a student, I have to have someone hold space for me when I go for stints where I'm not being a student. Oof.
It's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. No, I know. And it's interesting you said that too, like about holding space for yourself, right? And learning how to do that as a yoga teacher, as a Pilates teacher, as any educator, right? Learning that and not taking on the feelings of other people. That was one thing over COVID when my family moved from Chicago to San Antonio right at the beginning of COVID. And we also were part of opening a studio at the same time in San Antonio.
Oh my gosh.
So getting there, getting that all situated and all that stuff, like I felt really like heavy energy. And then we would meet people over the years that come in and they're like, oh, my husband just died. You know, I just found out that I'm pregnant. Or you get a lot of people, they know you're not their therapist, but they feel safe talking, right?
Which is rare.
Rare, right. And sharing with you. And so I actually went and got my death doula certification because I felt like I needed to understand the grieving process, the dying process, like just as an educating.
How to hold that trauma.
Yeah, because I just felt so heavy and so horrible after I would leave and felt like, did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? You know, and just worrying about the space that I left that person in. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. I highly, highly recommend doing it if you're ever interested in it. I mean, we all should know about death.
Yeah.
Well, I just found out Erica Badu is a death doula and a birth doula.
No way.
And she doesn't accept money. She just does it because she feels called to do it. I'm like, what a badass.
It's a really cool experience. Ever since that's happened to me, I've had a ton of friends call me with people that are past, you know, that are at the end stages of life and, you know, asking for advice and, you know, even like legacy work and just doing things like that to keep someone's name alive, you know, and giving people that little advice when they need it. But like going back to you too, I want to understand, like, so from a Pilates standpoint, do you feel like you're more of a Pilates? Because you know, there's always like the yoga versus Pilates, right? Yeah. And I do not believe in anything like that. In my opinion, yoga is a collaborative experience, and you're very lucky and blessed to be in Austin, where it is a very established, you know, practice that people recognize as beneficial. In San Antonio, it's still like it's growing, but it's new. It's very new still. It's still kind of like people are like, I don't want to stretch. You know, it's boring. It's like, no, you have no clue. But no clue. You have no clue.
It's a very, very young yoga city.
Yeah, but it's growing and it's so cool to watch it, you know. But when you were talking about like Pilates, right? I went through a mat Pilates training and I learned so much about the body through Pilates. And I find it really interesting that there's like, you're either a Pilates person or you're a yoga person. You can't be both. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I totally know what you're talking about. And you're a unicorn if you've done both.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
unicorn to unicorn, I love that you've done both. Have you done Pilates? Or
I've done
taught
it, not an instructor
Okay,
though.
okay. Well, there's another friend of mine who's another unicorn, and okay. So this is what I want to say about so I'm a full-time teacher, and I have to teach a variety of things in order for this to be a sustainable work life, right? So I will always kind of have my hand in a few different, modalities.
Great.
Pilates, specifically Pilates equipment, the machines that kind of give you this closed kinetic chain where you actually feel where your body is in space.
Yes.
Okay, so I came from a place of having zero relationship with my body. I didn't know where my body was in space. So I needed some, feedback from spring resistance to like get a sense of proprioception, like, oh, my arm is behind my head. I can't see it, but I know what muscles I should engage, right? So I really needed that foundation of a baseline of just being literally in my body. So then when I went to the next step for me was, yoga. I can be in my body. I can be on a mat and I know where I am in space. And then the beautiful thing, as we know with yoga, is, you go into all the layers, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the bliss. And so it was like I had to go out with Pilates externally, feel my body, to go in with yoga.
That's a really cool way that you said that. And I didn't realize, we all don't have the best mind-body connection, right? We don't really understand where we are in space most of the time. Like, I love in class, and you've probably seen it 1,000 times as well, or a million times, when you're like, lift your right leg, and someone's like, left leg. It's like, no, your other right leg,
And then it's their arm.
And then they pick up their arm. Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like getting that and getting past that judgment in your brain, like there's something wrong with you because you don't know where your body parts are, right? It's interesting.
Well, and to answer your question about like more Pilates or more yoga, Pilates, I've been teaching it for 17 years, but we all have a unique rhythm in which we move through life, right? And my unique rhythm is kind of slow. I'm not a hardcore person. I'm not intense. Like, I will never be intense. I have my moments,
Right.
And I do love teaching Pilates, but I also, I will reveal this secret to you. Ooh. I don't feel like I'm an intense enough teacher often. I feel like I'm like, kind of want to bring my maternal nurturing side of who I am. And I want to focus on like really nice breaths and stretches. I don't want to do a ton of planks and core and obliques and
Hundreds.
and butt
Yeah.
stuff. Like, well, that sounded bad, but you know what I mean?
Sound bad.
Who here wants to do butt stuff
butt
today?
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Nope. No bad stuff.
But I mean, and I make it work. I do work hard for my clients. I'm very dedicated. But yoga, specifically Yin yoga. Oh my God, Yin yoga changed my life. So
Tell me more. What was your first experience with it?
well, I learned how to receive. Like, I was never one to, the old Ashley, like pre-yoga, you'd give old Ashley a compliment and I'd just shrug it off. I'd be like, yeah, man, yeah, I guess my hair looks good. Yeah. And, Yin yoga, growing up in this American Western culture, like, we're never encouraged to slow down. I never was, we're never encouraged to go inward and stop and be still. Like, stillness was like the worst thing ever.
Absolutely.
And so it was so profound. It reached me in a point in my life. I was probably burnt out during this part of my life as I was finding Yin yoga, and my Yin yoga teacher was like, hey, you can do less and receive more. Yeah. And if you want to take a nap on your mat, you can do that. And I'm like, what? Are we allowed to let people do that? Like, aren't we like, in workout clothes? Like, I don't understand. And so it was so I love it. Just feels good in my body. It balances me out from the shoulds.
Yeah.
And so, and that's actually how I've been able to get into meditation, was a pathway through yin, you know, slowing down, embracing being really sensitive naturally. So I get to feel my internal world, you know.
Yes.
Do y'all like yin yoga? Are y'all yin?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I thought so, but
yeah.
I just
yeah.
wanted to hear it.
Well, and we both did a yoga nidra training together from a lovely lady named Liz, and she did a phenomenal job. And it was funny going through, and I'm sure you might have experienced this doing yin training as well, like having to stay awake when you're trying to learn because
Oh,
it's so
yeah.
like puts you to sleep.
Yeah,
you know?
you're so relaxed.
Exactly.
And we're definitely not encouraged to be still. Like you said, like stillness is the worst. Like it's an absence of productivity, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a
capitalistic.
big, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think also just when we think about wellness spaces, it's often thought about physical activity as it relates to wellness. But what can come with like rest and restore is just beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that actually leads to my next question. What does the new Ashley look like, the Ashley that receives?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just also want to touch on, you meant health and wellness industry. I jokingly call it wealth and hellness.
Oh my God, that's the best name I've ever heard.
She's writing that down.
I'm writing that down. Wealth and hellness.
Hellness.
Oh my God, that's great. We curse on our podcast too, by the way.
Okay, I was hoping. I think
yeah. No. I cannot filter myself like that. I'm a sailor.
I love that. The new Ashley with yoga and knowing how to receive. Oh my God. Okay. Let me just tell you what I've been doing for 3 years now. So I wanted to do, it was actually during 2020, I wanted to prove to myself that I was lucky and that I could receive because I wasn't sure. And obviously 2020 happened, you know, very devastating and very root chakra, like jarring, right?
Yes.
Very ungrounded. You know, no money. How am I going to pay? You know,
Yeah.
like so many people. And so I started writing a list, not out of like, what is the universe going to give me? But more like acknowledging all those small little moments of like sweetness, like people giving me gifts or like the barista giving me a free coffee, or that happened actually a lot one year.
No way. Did they have a crush on you?
I wouldn't even know.
No, Adrienne, she was lucky.
Oh,
I was
got it.
lucky.
Got
I was
it.
lucky. That would be cool. That would be cool too. But basically,
Lucky to be so hot.
Why? Thank you. Yeah. So see, I can receive compliments now.
Yeah, I like that.
But so basically, now you know it doesn't matter if I really was lucky or not. I have a documented list yearly of every generous thing I was received that was unexpected.
Almost like a gratitude, like you said.
Almost like a gratitude
list. I
and
love
if you
that.
and if you think about it, someone gave me, oh my God, I was at a cafe, someone gave me half of their sandwich. Isn't that bizarre? This is before COVID. I think after, I don't think I would.
You'd be like, no thanks.
But it was very bizarre, you know. So anyway, I started to notice all these bizarre moments. Like people were I was just getting free stuff, or like there'd be like a $20 bill on the ground, like
Your luck.
like I would just be like, so for whatever, if it's true or not, like I feel lucky looking at this list. And then fast forward, I was doing it consistently. You want to know like how lucky I got?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a cat mama, like I said.
How many cats do you have?
Only 2. I have like a sane amount of cats.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so big confession, I have 4.
Oh my God, I did not mean. I was.
No,
You know, I joke.
No,
no.
trust
Okay.
me.
Totally.
It's
That-
not
that-
okay, the number of cats.
Oh,
I
okay.
have.
Well, that'll be
One's
me in a
kind
year.
of a mistake. So
Oh, okay.
We have 2 dogs and we're about to get a third. so-
imagine.
I love it.
Yeah, I have a mistake cat. That's so funny.
A mistake cat. Well, we have a mistake dog too. Yeah, we're just like, he's 14. We're like, any day now. Sorry, Charlie.
Well, the most lucky I've ever been, I just got randomly gifted. I guess Amazon messed up, so it was actually a gift. I didn't have to pay it, but they gave me 17 cases of Fancy Feast.
Holy shit.
This was during 2020 when I had zero money.
Was that like a pallet?
It was a pallet. All my neighbors were like, "What the hell is going on?"
Like they seriously had to pull a pallet
It was
up.
$700 worth of Fancy Feast, and they just set it outside my door.
Your cats are like, bitch, it's Christmas.
Yeah, they were like, Yes.
Are we rich?
But yeah, are we rich?
Mom's got money.
Rich in pate, baby.
Where'd you even put all of it?
Seriously.
Well, I donated a lot of it because
That
it
was
felt
really sweet.
wrong to hoard all that, you know?
I was like, there's also probably like cat food shortages at some point. 'Cause
Yeah,
of, like supply
exactly.
chain issues. And it's like,
It's
why?
all
Because it's
Amazon.
all at Ashley's house.
Ashley's house.
Yeah, and Amazon called me. They're like, "What? You know, we don't know how this happened, but I guess you can just keep it or donate it." And I'm like, "Okay," but I find it ironic that it happened while I was documenting all these weird, free, random things given. But what's cool is you can look back over the years and be like, "I can't believe, you know, Jen gave me this. Da-da-da-da. Oh my God, that was so sweet of her." And you know, so
I love that idea of doing that because I feel like you think back over your life, you remember all the shitty things that people said to you or did to you first, right? Like I remember a comment that one of my friends made to me in high school about I had thunder thighs, and I was anorexic,
For me, it was my crooked nose.
crooked nose.
I was like, I remember the worst part is I was like, I like my nose. That's a good part.
I know you
I was like,
Yeah.
really? Because it's crooked.
shut the
And I was
hell
like,
up.
and so then ever since I've been like, I do have a crooked nose.
No, but that's horrible because that's what embeds in our worst case scenario brains,
Yeah.
right? That's what we think about and that's what we hold on to. So the fact that you're flipping the narrative of how you're reforming the relationship with how you're thinking about yourself and your place in the world, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool that you write it down because what I get like anytime I get a little note like up in Chicago when you would teach a class and then you have a friend that's teaching after you, you know, they'd leave a little note like, hope your class is great, you know, whatever. So I have a little drawer and it's getting larger over the years of all the little notes that I've gotten from students or from, you know, whatever it is. And so I just keep that on my desk. So if I'm having a shitty day, it's like open the damn drawer and realize that you're not as shitty as you think you are and you need to move the fuck on with your life and get on with it, you know?
Yeah, well, the energy that all those notes hold probably feel really good.
Yes,
you know.
true.
Well, I do want to touch on one thing because we're talking about receiving. You know, it's all about, in my opinion, it's all about worthiness. Am I worthy of that free cappuccino? Do I deserve it? You know, and I had to realize, yes, I deserve all the compliments, all the things, all the fancy feasts. You know, I mean, not for myself. You know, I don't eat fancy feasts.
But you might have tried it when there's $700
Dollars worth of it.
Ooh, it's quite fancy. Even
I would
for
have
humans.
I would have loved to have been your neighbor when that shit showed up on your front porch. Just be like, oh, she's single and she's got a pallet of cat food.
Pallets.
I'm also just
Yeah.
imagining it like those videos where you open a door and it's all snow. It's like you open it and you just hit all cat food.
Yeah,
You know, like that's
It was
the
like you were there.
vision.
Yeah.
I kind of want you to send us a picture if you have a picture of the pallet. I don't know if
I'll
you-
look back.
Yeah.
I might have one. Yeah.
That would be hysterical. That would be hysterical. So I wanted to ask you really quickly too. So we talked about like, hey, you know, you went into yoga class, not a great experience, you know, kind of figuring things out, feeling like I didn't know my body well enough. So can you pinpoint places in your life where you noticed the shift of yoga, physical practice on your mat, meditation, whatever, moving into your life? Like I noticed when I went through teacher training that I was speaking clearer to my kids because I was cueing them actively to do things. You know, sit down, reach your arms up, grab the paper towel holder, grab this and clean the countertop, you know? It's like everything got clearer. So I noticed that it was bleeding in, rippling into my life. Do you have any of those little moments?
I think I do. Yeah. Like when you're saying that, I'm like, oh wow, no one's ever asked me that. And okay, so the moment I'm going to start with like kind of the seed that was planted. So I loved how eloquently all my yoga teachers spoke and how comfortable they were with public speaking and how grounded they seemed and how they could just hold a conversation in a group in front of people. And even though I had been a Pilates teacher for a while, keep in mind that was mostly one-on-one or
Yeah.
small groups. It was never
Very
a group
small,
of
yeah.
20. So there was a public speaking part of me that was very afraid as I was considering yoga teacher training, but not sure. But I knew I wanted whatever they had, right? And so I think for me, I did the teach. It really took for me a teacher training, getting comfortable with teaching in a group and getting over, honestly, like the anxiety of speaking in a big group.
Yeah, it's
like
a lot.
that was a huge turning point for me. And I had to use the skills of yoga specifically yoga that I learned, like alternate nostril breathing. I had to, when you're standing, unlock my knees so I'd feel the ground, lift up, connect to source, like call on my spirit guides, like, I had to really own, like, oh, you're bad at public speaking. So like, let's use that yoga to like work on it,
Pull it out of
pull
you.
it out. And then the other profound moment, and this is like me after I was certified, and it took a lot of time. I had a regular yoga practice. I had yoga friends. Literally, energetically, I had walls on my heart. I was very hardened.
Yeah.
And
Protective mode, right?
Very protective, yeah. And I remember one day I was out at this creek and I could just feel the walls. Like I only had like 2 walls on the back of my heart. I know this is real woo-woo, but
No, it's not.
But I remember like just saying, I want these to come off. And like, I think within a week I could just start to feel a shift. And I think more than anything, in my yoga teacher training, they asked, what do you want to get from this training? What one word? And mine was expansion. And boy, did it deliver. So it wasn't really any one moment. It wasn't really like, it was like processes of moments.
Yes.
And I mean, gives me tricep chills, like to reflect and look back. Cause I've never really like sat down and talked to anyone about that.
That's really cool though. But it's like sometimes you don't recognize it in the moment that it's happening, but you recognize it years later when you look back and you're like, God, I was such an asshole, but then yoga made me more patient. It made me more open to listen, and what you're talking about, public speaking, for me, I worked in the beer industry before I became a yoga teacher. So speaking publicly was fine for me because it was in a work environment. But when I had to get up in teacher training and teach for the first time, I started crying. And I got so mad at myself. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You can talk in a room full of hundreds of people. Like, why is this bothering you? But it was because it was me. It wasn't the stuff. It wasn't the beer. It wasn't the sales. It was me speaking and trying to hold space and help other people alleviate their own suffering, right? Co-create this experience with them so that they feel not judged and that they, language to me is super important. The way that you speak to your students and being able to say to them, I kind of, it might be like a little kind of itchy issue with a lot of yoga teachers right now, but I believe in action-oriented cueing and saying things like, reach your arms up, right? In the industry, we hear a lot of lifting the fingers. It's like, well, whose fingers? Where the fuck are these fingers coming from? Right? Like, it's yours, right? And if I say lift your fingers up, then it's different than if I say, like, maybe you can try to lifting the fingers off the mat. And it's like, wait, who are you talking to? And now I get pissed because I'm like, what if I can't do it? Now I'm a loser. So I feel like the less is more, right?
Oh,
Ninja
I
style.
agree.
So when you first taught your first yoga class, was it like mine, like a total shit show?
Well, thank you I thought I blocked that from my memory. So thank you for jogging.
Yeah, sorry. Good luck.
No, it was so, there was, to be frank, there was a lot of ego when I was like in my mid-20s. I mean,
I don't think I've met a kid in their mid-20s that doesn't have a little bit of that.
So I'm like reflecting and I'm like, ooh, like that emoji where their teeth are like, oh.
Yeah.
But I think for my I had to practice teach. Okay, so the feedback I got when I was practice teaching amongst like people, mind you, that I've already taught Pilates, I was then teaching them yoga like on the side, like because you have to get a few teaching hours under your belt. And I was a different person when I would teach yoga, and they, the feedback I got was like, oh my God, you need more confidence. And I was like, oh, that's so painful
that
to
hurts
hear.
my stomach just dropped. Yeah.
But you know what? The truth hurts, but they were right. And I did, eventually get more confidence. But that was really rough. Yeah, I mean, I was nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember being nervous, and because I was nervous, that felt like a shit show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I probably cried after.
Yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
a cry in silent, like in my little corner
Yeah,
in my room.
exactly.
I
It's
won't
like you'll
cry
hold
in
it.
front of people.
Yeah, you'll hold it until you get out.
Yeah.
When you were talking about, oh man, I think I just lost my train of thought too. It was a really good question about, oh yes. So you were talking about like getting confident and like public speaking, getting in front of a group of people and speaking. So when I went through teacher training and when I teach teachers now, I try my best to give them like rituals, like little things that they can do before they go in to teach. I had a teacher friend a while back that said she does a power pose before she goes into the studio and like just stands there like Superwoman for a second and kind of takes a deep breath in and out. I've got my students that I mentor, I make them mala bracelets with their other teachers, stones for their birthdays on it, little things. But my ritual is I wash my hands and I wash my feet before I go in and after I leave, so that I it's like a cleansing of like, I'm not bringing anything into the space and I'm not taking anything with me. Do you have any of those things that you find that you do?
Yeah, so I actually do that. I do the hand washing after, so I like wash myself, from that.
Yep.
Yeah, I do just I'm such an earth sign. Oh my god. So I have a tendency of like not breathing when I'm like okay, I'm getting ready for class, I'm gonna just not breathe. And so I deliberately, it's so simple, but I deliberately take deep breaths. I deliberately feel the ground. Either I sit on the ground or I have my feet on the ground. But then the big thing I do is I learned how to do this. This really cool woman who's like in her 70s, who's like a mother to me, taught me this. She's like in the metaphysical world. Is it her? Maybe.
Now you're like,
I'm going to give her credit.
Yeah.
I'll usually, like in a class, I'll center the group. We have our eyes closed or soft gaze. And then I'll as we're finishing our alms or as we're finishing our exhales or whatever, I tap my heart 3 times. And then I tap the crown of my head 3 times, because I want to speak from my heart, and then I want to connect to source. I want like something bigger than myself to help hold space. And then I work with the Divine Mother, which is that's like kind of one of my, go-tos is like I call in the Divine Mother for whatever it's worth.
Right. I love that. You need to have something to hold on to, something, you have to have that kind of little anchor within you that it's not like you have to pull it from someplace else and attach it or Velcro it to yourself. It's like you have it within you. It's just blowing out the bullshit.
And then wouldn't you think like what the biggest, most profound shift with yoga is dropping from my head down into my heart. Like that has been the biggest shift for me, because when I was in my head all the time, I was just so anxious and so judgmental of myself, stories about not being worthy, like, the hamster wheel.
Yep.
And so I think like this tapping on my heart is that reminder of like, oh yeah, yoga taught you to like drop down in your heart. So let's just use that.
That's a really cool tactical way, or is that right? Yeah. Tactical? Sounded weird. Tactile. That's it. Tactical is like if I'm in the army and I'm
maybe.
going, like,
good point.
Yeah. Tactics.
I was like, no, it's right.
Yeah, you're like, and she's a school teacher.
No, you're good. You're right. Tactical, absolutely.
Tactile. But that's a really neat kind of way of tapping into yourself beforehand. I like that.
Literally.
And then considering what you've learned about yourself, like these skills, this insight, this like even ability to receive, what can others learn from you?
Well, that's because I'm a teacher, so I guess whatever it is that they want to learn that's in the realm of yoga, Pilates, and meditation. I feel like I have a variety. I think what I have to offer is, I teach a lot of out-of-towners. I teach a lot of skeptics. I teach a lot of people who've never done meditation. What my superpower is as a teacher is I make it relatable to that individual. So if it's like a bro who his girlfriend dragged him into yoga and he's terrified, you know the type.
Yes. Oh yeah.
I'm all for that challenge. I also teach aerial yoga, which dear new people, they're like terrified. They're like looking at me like, what did I sign up for? I'm like, it's gonna be okay.
Dude, I bought a couple area silks when I was in Chicago because we had a great basement where I could hang them. And I had so much fun learning, and I went through a little training on it. But then a few years ago, I went to a studio in San Antonio, and I was like, these bitches are doing way more shit than I learned how to do. I'm like, I am dying. It's so hard.
It can be so intense. So I think I'm a really good intuitive person. I can read the individual. I can read the room. I want people. I don't ever want, if I can help it, I don't ever want people to be turned off about physical movement.
Right.
I want them to feel inspired. So I'm really careful like how I present things. I always want it accessible for people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This was a great conversation. Like I really liked it.
Thank you.
It's nice to learn about you. And I do think that you're lucky, but I also think that you're very, very worthy of everything that you've had. And there's more to come, Ashley. What you're doing in the yoga world and for people, for skeptics, for people that are newbies, beginners, it's huge. And we need more people like you in the world. So thank you so much.
You. That's so sweet. Thank you.
true.
Where can people find you, Ashley?
Well, I'm all over the place online. AshleyWeberYoga.com is my website. That's like my catch-all to all the stuff I do. Yoga and Podcast I'm the creator and host. You can find me on Instagram. We even have a TikTok now. I don't know what I'm doing on TikTok.
We don't either.
Okay.
Well, actually, Mia knows what she's doing, but I have no flipping clue. I
All
just
right,
feel like an old lady looking stupid. But whatever.
I'll ask Mia
Yeah,
what
Mia.
TikTok's about.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the places you can find me the easiest. So I hope to connect with you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Adrienne, I absolutely loved that interview. It blew all of my expectations out of the water. I think I was super nervous meeting someone new who we didn't have a relationship with prior to
I know.
interviewing.
God, it was really intimidating because Mia and I have been working together for years, but we decided on this podcast like legit in November, said, hey, let's do a podcast. Okay, I'll get the mics, we'll get the setup. And by January, we're planning and recording, and middle of February was our goal. We made it, and we have been podcasting now for a few months, and it's crazy. But going up there and having a chance to interview someone that we didn't know, someone that, was it was a big deal to us, kind of a big deal, Ashley, is what you are, because you have interviewed like Leslie Kaminoff and some of the people that I love in the business. And for you to be willing participant in a brand new podcast to tell your yoga origin story was just wonderful. Mm-hmm. The library was a beautiful setup. So all you podcasters out there, make sure you check out your local library for free space rentals because it actually works really well. Ashley was just funny and lovely and very open. I felt like she was a sister from another mister, like I've known her for a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it just blows me away every time the way yoga has an impact on people and touches people in unique ways, right? In different ways. Mm-hmm. But every time it moves me. Yeah. Every time I just feel gratitude for this practice and the way that it carries us. Mm-hmm. And I think gratitude's a great word to describe Ashley's story, right? This idea of being open and receiving what is ours, right?
Yeah.
It's already ours. Like so many of these things that are coming our way are meant for us, but we're closed off to it.
Yes, big time. Well, and if you think about it from Ashley's perspective too, is like she said, to slow down and to have the ability to receive, right? You have the ability to receive and you're worthy of receiving it. And for all of us, we're always saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not talented enough. But why are we comparing ourselves to other people when we should be diving deep inside to see what are we really amazing at? What is our gifts instead of thinking that everyone else knows us better than we know ourselves?
Right. I think it's a self-preservation thing as well. When stepping into your gift, stepping into your path or your truth can be really intimidating because it might not be what's traditional or what's expected of you.
true.
And so you close yourself off because you want to stay with what is certain. You want to stay with what has a stable income. You want to stay with the health benefits, right?
Yeah.
When I think about especially yoga, right?
yeah.
If you are stepping into teaching yoga full time, that can be very intimidating. It's probably not what you expected for yourself growing up. It's probably not what your parents expected for you growing up.
True.
It's not what your neighbor's going to expect you to say when you say, "What do you do full time?"
Yeah.
And they might even like have a little pity for you because like there's not the health benefits.
Nope.
There's not the sustainability of other careers. And so I think also you close yourself off to your gifts or you close yourself off to your passions because those things don't seem certain. But the truth is when you step into your truth, when you step into your dharma is what we call it, right? Then so much else will follow. And I'm a really big believer that if what you have to offer is genuine and it's true, then it is going to land and resonate with someone else. And so much will snowball off that.
Absolutely. And how interesting it too, like she is talking about how when she went through teacher training, like right before she went through teacher training, actually, she's talking about how, you know, this feeling of fear of public speaking, right? And like that she was intimidated to do that. And that yoga helped her kind of gain that foundation, but it wasn't the yoga itself. It was her. It was her saying like, I can do this. I can talk in front of one person teaching Pilates. I can teach in front of 20 people teaching yoga, you know, and it is that vulnerability. It is stepping into a place where you're kind of showing your uniqueness. You're showing your colors, right? Like who you're made of. And for me, I've always kind of lived myself like that. Like I've always just been like, this is who I am. Love me or leave me, you know, and it hurts when they leave and it's great when they love and they stay, but you have to be able to be content with yourself. So like the theme that you had talked about of gratitude, right? And getting into Santosha, which is one of the niyamas of the yamas and the niyamas. So think about it like this. Your niyamas are kind of your path to a positive relationship within yourself, right? How do you look at yourself? How do you analyze yourself? How do you show up? The other piece of it is the yamas, which is your representation in the outside world. How do you show up for others? So niyama of Santosha is contentment. And that is a very powerful word, right? I used to think content was a negative. I'm just content. What does that mean? You're not happy or you're sad?
I'm okay with what it is, right? Like
Yeah.
it's almost like giving up.
Yeah, it's like what does that mean? Like, are you happy? What does that mean? But when you really dive into it and you look at it, and I think you and I talked about this before, was, you know, all the things that you want, that you think that you need, or that you think that you desire because someone else has it, or that's the way you were taught growing up that everyone should have this ability or gift or whatever, instead of just seeing like, hey, I have all of this other stuff, right? And this other stuff is what makes me so amazing, and why we don't hold ourselves accountable to being content with the fact that we are our own selves amazing.
Right, right. And if you're starting to wonder like, well, how do I go about practicing contentment? The first thing to know is just don't beat yourself up, right? Like I think it's really natural for our mind and our thoughts to go so many other places. We have something like 70,000 unique or individual thoughts every single day. And so your mind is going to drift. Your mind has this ability to be in the past, the present, and the future. But that sense of contentment is going to come from the present moment. So there is this need for mindfulness, to be mindful of where you're at in this exact moment. And maybe you take a moment right now and consider, where am I? What am I doing? What is everything that has already worked out right for me? For me to be right here in this moment, for me to get to this point in my day, what has everything that has happened that's gone right for me? And that in itself is practicing mindfulness. It's practicing contentment. It's a super small thing. Maybe you set yourself like a little reminder that goes off at like the 12th minute of every hour, and you sit there and you reflect, or maybe you put a sticky note on your dashboard, and it's just being present in the moment.
Absolutely. And having that, you say it's easy, right? But for some reason, it leaves our thought process instantaneously.
Absolutely.
And then as soon as we're getting in bed, we're like, damn, I forgot to do my gratitude journal today, or I forgot to do this today.
And it's not easy. By no means, it's so easy to get off track.
Exactly. So like you said, setting that alarm or setting that reminder and having that, and I do kind of like that you said hourly. Like I was thinking like, oh, like once or twice a day. But that kind of consistency of pattern behavior, when you're talking about your brain and neuroplasticity, right? Like we're actually talking about rewiring the way that you think about yourself, the way that you see yourself, and how you identify and familiarize yourself with yourself and your relationship with others. But like when you can discern between the stories that you've been told in your head and that you keep telling yourself, and instead what you actually feel, right? Like not feel from like a, just physical sense, but just like, how do you embody that passion inside of you? Like what makes you excited every day? Is it your job? Is it your, hobbies? Is it your family? Is it your friends? Like there are reasons that you are ignited by these passions, and these passions come up, and those where you find those almost little bits of bliss moments throughout your day, lean into those more.
Yeah. And throughout the day, and I say that hourly because like you said, we're rewiring our brain. Mm-hmm. And I think where that came for me from is my dad and I went to Magnolia Grove. It's a Buddhist monastery in the middle of Mississippi. So random.
No way.
Yeah. It's from the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. He has 3 monasteries. It's California, Mississippi, and Paris. Like, I don't know how they landed on Mississippi. But, Magnolia Grove, I highly recommend it. They have all kinds of retreats. And my dad and I went, when I was in college, we went together. And every time a bell would ring, you had to stop whatever you were doing and take 3 rounds of breath. Oh. And it just made you pause and contemplate, where am I? What am I doing? And of course, I was just in this beautiful setting, right? Mm-hmm. And I was probably loving what I was doing. But sometimes we'd be in the middle of washing dishes and we'd have to stop. Everyone around you would stop and just take these 3 moments to yourself. So if a phone would ring, if a gong would ring out throughout the whole monastery, if the alarm clock went off, if anything.
Oh, it was any bell that went off.
Any bell. Oh. And so some things you knew, okay, the dinner bell's going to ring at 5 p.m. and the go to bed bell's going to ring at 9 p.m. and the wake up bell's going to ring at 5 a.m. Yeah. But even the phone ringing, before anyone would answer it, they would take 3 rounds of breath.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. See, I was literally picturing a guy in a bell tower
ringing it every
hour, or like surprise, like on a whim.
Any bell. And we didn't have our cell phones, but I've thought about that when I left in the classroom. And I really only stuck to it during COVID when I had like 5 kids and I was like super easy to inspire 5 kids to take on a mindfulness practice. Yeah. But we would do that where if like my phone chimed because I got a text message, or, my Teams message came through from a colleague, like me and my group of 3 to 4 students would take like a mindful breath and then we would go. Like it was just a nice pause.
I like that a lot. I think that is definitely, I try to take the mindset or perspective of think before you speak. I'm not always great at that, as many of my friends can attest to, my family, but I work on it. And I think that's the biggest thing is it's not about achieving this prize. This is about a daily kind of regulation of your nervous system, right? So it's the same way that you keep engine oil and gas in your car, the same thing, like you have to keep a maintenance of what's going on. And your brain can get all jacked up on all these other ideas, thoughts, and interests. And as people, we're humans, are natural storytellers. We tell ourselves stories all the time. When I look at new bodies that come into my yoga classes and I look at them and I'm excited to have them in class and see them move. And when they say, oh, well, I can't touch my toes, I'm not limber enough. I'm not flexible enough. Or yeah, I can't bend my hip that way because I have arthritis. It's like, yeah, you're telling yourselves all these stories. Yes, yes, yes. There's stuff about what doctors say, right? Remember, we're not doctors. We're just yogi podcasters. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about your body, it's why do we have such limitations and self-doubting beliefs about ourselves? Why can't we just show up and be like, let's see what happens,
And our abilities and our confidence.
Everything.
And how we just show up in the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think contentment, is not being unhappy or not being neutral. It's about recognizing all around you and inside you.
What is.
Yeah. Instead of what you think maybe, was, before, could be, should be, I'll be happier when this happens. Like, stop with the limiting bullshit and just sit, like you said, and just take a few breaths. And I loved her story about how she took her list, right? And she's got her small little mementos and gifts. And she also has, what was it?
A pallet of cat food, like 17,000 cans of Fancy Feast, something like that. I don't know about 17,000.
Can't stop thinking about like her standing in the doorway with her cats and like all like her, just this fucking wall full of Fancy Feast cat food. But that, yeah, I mean, all like the little things that she noticed, like that's something that if you're focused on the negative all the time, that's all you're ever going to freaking see. It's 100% true that you'll see what you want to see. Have you ever done this as a game, like with yourself? It's kind of a little mind fuckery, but it's kind of neat to do it. Is if you go to a mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror, but before you look in your mirror, you stand in front of the mirror, close your eyes, and you start to think really beautiful thoughts about yourself. Like, oh, I'm having a great hair day. You can't see my side sleeping wrinkles on my face. Like I don't have, all of the furrow brow. And I start thinking really positive thoughts about myself. Then I open my eyes and I'll see that. But if you start and try it the other way, close your eyes and just think, oh my gosh, my cheeks are so fat. I got droopy, like, what's that dog's name on the cartoons? I don't know. It's an old cartoon dog with the jowls.
Like a basset hound?
Yeah, like a basset hound kind of thing. Yeah, or like my skin feels blotchy. And then you open your eyes. That's exactly what you'll focus on. And that is just a simple little exercise that you can do with yourself at home to recognize, how am I thinking about myself today, right? Even if you just close your eyes, take a few breaths, then open them, what do you see? And if you can start to rewire your brain, which we all know is scientifically plausible, possible, achievable, freaking take the time to do it, because no one else is going to fucking do it for you.
No, definitely not.
That's why we wanted this podcast to be out there, is like, cut through the bullshit of people trying to make us feel like we should be somebody that we're not, or to look like somebody that we're not. I don't want to look like the bitches on Instagram. I don't want to look like those people. I want to be myself.
And I want to be comfortable as myself.
Exactly. It's comfortability in the skin that I'm in rather than comparing and contrasting.
Because the thing is, I could then go look like someone who's on Instagram, or I could change all these things about myself. But if I have not found contentment in me, those things won't matter.
No.
I'm still always going to be searching for something else. And I think, I can attest to it as someone who struggled with disordered eating growing up. You're never going to, it's tough. Yeah. You're just never going to be happy, right?
Right.
No matter how much weight I lost, I thought I needed to lose more because I was not comfortable being me.
Yeah.
Right. I was not comfortable in my body. And so it was a coping mechanism, right? Weight loss was a coping mechanism.
And
food
a control.
restriction, was a control mechanism, a coping mechanism. And those don't have endpoints, right?
Yeah.
They don't have endpoints.
Yeah.
They're unobtainable, and it's a disorder. And so there's a lot of things that go into that, but
it is possible over time to rewire those thought processes.
Oh,
in your head.
absolutely.
It does take a long time though. And we're not in a place in a society yet where we accept people with disorders as something different. Like I say to my kids and I say to myself, like, I don't have mental disorders like anxiety, depression, ADHD. I have gifts. right? Those are my gifts. And if I look at them as gifts, because it does make my brain order differently than yours, but that doesn't mean that it's something wrong with me. It's not a disorder, but instead it's what makes me unique. And when I started to think about it that way, I was then way more open talking about the fact that I have anxiety, that I have depression, that I have ADHD, and being open to being like, yeah, I'm fucked up just like everybody else is. And I own my fuck upness and I'm working on it. Right. But it's not that I'm this bad person or disordered person. I actually have it and it steers me sometimes in the right way. I don't know. I just hate the like idea of like, well, I'll be happier when this happens. Or if I had money, then I'd be happy. Or if I had this, then I'd be that. And when you're constantly looking for something, you are missing out on the moments. You're missing out on the beauty around you. Just little things like we got a puppy a week ago, right? Not even a week ago. And just little things like we're watching her sleep and she's got her head on her little paws and, you know, she has these little puppy breath and her feet still smell like popcorn and you know, all these like little things that if you are not in the moment present and happy or content with who you are and how you came about here, go home, you know, figure it out. So contentment is when you're actively differentiating between situations that you can and you cannot change, right? So it's like you're genuinely content with your situation. It's not probably perfect, but you're still actively looking for ways to improve and you're happy with that process too. So it's not about like, because complacency is faking it, right? It becomes a very forced way. It's like I'm complacent. I'm content. That's two totally different things. When you're working in contentment, it's really where you're actively differentiating the situations. Like, yes, I can change this. No, I can't change this. And no matter what, I'm happy and I am improving and I'm happy with that process that's coming to me.
And I think that's why next week we are definitely going to bring this little gratitude list that Ashley mentioned, and that's going to be our follow-up episode. It's how to take this yoga into a personal practice off of your mat into your life. It's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I feel like when we have an opportunity to give you something small from a little gift from one of our interviewees, you know, one of our guests, I feel like that is really where we want to live from. You know, we want to share these little bits. Maybe it'll change your day. Maybe you won't listen. Maybe you won't even want to listen. But these little bonus episodes are there for you to start to incorporate some of these little pieces of parts of the science of yoga and the philosophy of yoga.
Some other little bits that are exciting new stuff from our podcast. Ooh. We have first a Buy Me a Coffee site. This is a way that you can support the podcast. We've said it a few times, but Adrienne and I are just sitting in her bonus room. We have put all of our energy into this podcast. And so if you are willing to support us and you're looking for some additional content, you are craving more ways to take your practice off of the mat and into your life, we have a section of our Buy Me a Coffee where you can get additional meditations, additional journal practices, additional guidance in this personal practice. And then if you're also craving some movement, we have a section where you can practice asana with us, right? Yep. We are going to guide you through some practices. So that's one exciting thing. The other is we have a Redbubble site now. So we have been really enjoying these interviews and we have just taken a few little tidbits from these interviews and we've made some really cool limited edition stickers. So we have at least one for Ashley. I actually just thought of another and I kind of want to throw it up there too.
Oh, good. I was just thinking about one too. Yes.
And so these are just cute, fun little stickers. They're vinyl. You can throw them on your laptop, throw them on your water bottle. And so these will only be up for 1 month at a time just because we want to kind of move them in and out as we interview new people. Check out our Buy Me a Coffee. It is linked in our show notes as well as our Redbubble site.
Yep. You can also check us out at howyogachangedmylife.com. Follow us. email us. We want to hear stories from you too. Send us, even if it's a short story, maybe it's something funny that happened in yoga class or your most embarrassing moment or anything like that. Share with us a little bit about your practice. This has been a really fun way to get to know people on a very deep level very quickly. And I hope that you guys are enjoying it. So don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Have a lovely day. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye.
Something when I fight for the family. Yeah, right? Yeah. You go back to school.